Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, Hyphens Classics. As you can see today, I've got one of my other cats helping me today, keeping the laptop warm. Or is it around the other way? Anyway, today we're back on the Mini. Yes, there's quite a lot of content I've got on the Mini, and for those Land Rover fans out there, I will get back to that at some point. There's just a lot on at the moment, and one of the things I have to do is because the Land Rover is able to drive around, I can remove it when I need to, and the Mini at some point, because it's not drivable at the moment, I really need to get it drivable again, because there's a possibility I might need to vacate the premises I'm in. So we're going to focus on just sort of getting as much of that done as possible at the moment. But as I said, the content's there for Land Rover, and I will get back to it, I promise. Anyway, let's get into this content. Okay guys, we've got the other side off. So now we come to the near side. As you can see, I'd already taken some of this apart just to help speed things up. So we're going to drop this trailing arm. And the other thing we need to do on this side is, before I took this car off the road, I hadn't known exactly when this was going to happen. So I was low on petrol, so I filled it up. Hasn't driven much since then, so I've got quite a lot of fuel in the tank. So what we're going to do is get this out, and just up under here, we'll get you around with the camera so you can have a look underneath. We're going to try and pull off the petrol filler pipe as close to the tank as possible. We've got a siphon in the tank there. What I'm trying to do is we'll try and get as much of that fuel out as possible, so that when we drop the tank, it won't be too heavy. I mean, we're close enough to the ground, but the less fuel in it, the better from my perspective. Right, we'll get in and do this. And then we'll get in with a screwdriver, take off that clip, and get this job done. Alright. Alright, that's off. No leaks. Alright. Twist that one around. And just while we're here, right, so up here you'll see an earth strap, and this is basically on a metal clip that's going up and just inside the fuel pipe here. Because this is plastic, I was talking to my cameraman Darren here, and the thought is that because when you're filling up, the nozzle can build up static electricity, and obviously you don't want any discharge of electricity going down here when you're filling up the fuel. Maybe something you'd do on the 5th of November, you know, get some fire going, but not here, not in the car, not when you're that close to it. So anyway, if you've got any other ideas what you think that might be, drop them in the comments below. But now we've got this off, and we're going to get the siphon, try and get as much petrol out as possible. We've got a few tanks, might take a few of these to get all this out, so let's give that a go. That's better. There we go. Much better. Keep a good eye on that. Going in the tank. Okay, we've got the petrol tank empty. We've got the trailing arms off. Now, to get the subframe and the tank out, the exhaust is in the way, so we're going to have to drop that down. Before we get in underneath and have a look at that, I want you to have a look at something and tell me what you think. This is the rear crash member or frame, and having a look at this, there's some bends in this and the mounting plate, which look quite even. So I'm not 100% sure if that's just the way they are, and then when it does get hit, they fold. But if you have a look in the end here, that really looks like it's been hit already. And you look at it on the top here, once I peel away all the dirt and crap, it's quite wavy, and it's not sort of straight. And you come further in, and that V has got a lot more expansion. So if you get hit, then that would allow that to compress and obviously take the shock. So it'd be interesting to see if you could drop in the comments below and let me know if you reckon that's been hit. But I guess another thing that's important to note, for those of you who are in traffic and you get a slight bump, you go out and have a look and go, oh, no, it's fine. Well, guess what? you take the bumper off and you may find that it's not fine. And this is important. Like I said, this structure is designed to take all of the energy in a crash. And if it's already being pushed in, then you know what? A lot more of the energy in the next crash is going to go through into the car. So always make sure you get that checked out, because if you get a bump, you want to make sure this has been replaced. Right, let's go underneath. Let's get this exhaust off. Right, we've just disconnected the rear muffler from the front, the cat part, and I've sort of loosened off the main plate underneath, and now going back and just, what I did is I decided to disconnect all of the hangers, because I'm going to spray paint and clean up the whole back of the car, the chassis. I wanted everything out the way, and the hangers probably need a bit of work as well, and it's just a little bit easier than sort of pulling it all off. So, well, at least that was the idea. So again, now just loosening everything off and making sure we're ready to take things out. So I use stainless steel bolts up in the front here on the joint. So it's always fun. The bottom one's easy to get undone, but because the top one's hidden up in the top of the car and the channel, it's actually not that easy to get to. But got that one out. And the main supporting bracket in the middle, that was actually quite easy to get undone. But the rear hangers, I had a bit of fun with those. The near side, which I'm on right now, that wasn't too bad, which, considering I would have thought that was where the most of the corrosion is, and I've certainly seen most of the corrosion on the brakes and that actually came out all right. But I think also on the far side where I am now, wow, that was interesting. Got sort of close to the end, and I forgot on one of them to sort of back off because it got a bit tight. I forgot to back off and ended up tearing the bottom of the bolt off. Now it's not too bad. There's enough there I can continue to use it, but it's just one thing to remember. If things get stuck, back them off, get rid of the crap with a small white brush or something, then try again. Don't keep forcing it like I did. So as you can see, I put a jack underneath and I put it just under the Y where the 3-inch pipe comes into the 2.5-inch pipes, just so it's supported and balanced. And there you go. So undid the last of the bolts, and she's out. Move the camera. Unfortunately, again, because I'm doing this all myself, I did tend to focus on getting the work done rather than trying to get the content right. So apologies for not being able to see it, but the heat shield comes in a few sections. Right, the heat shield comes in a few sections. There's that central piece there, which we just pulled out, which goes across the petrol tank, keeps that from getting too hot. Then there's the main large part at the back. Now, around the battery box, you have two pieces, one on the back, one on the front, which have to come off as well. Now, the problem is because there's a steel, it's a kind of a washer nut all in one that's been pressed, and they're not great, but obviously they're there, just they don't need to be expensive, and it's just a nice cheap way of putting something on. But when you get two different metals, as probably most of you know, aluminium and steel especially, they do just naturally corrode, and it's to do with the electrical currents that go through it and a number of other things. I'm not a chemist, but I'm sure someone knows the real reason for it all. But certainly made some of these to pain to get off. In fact, the heat shield at the back of the battery box is still on there. I didn't manage to get that off. But anyway, got that you can see I'm sort of really struggling here to get that off. And in the end, I managed to get enough of the rest of it off that I managed to pull it off around it. So yeah, just be careful with those. I found as well, because the corrosion sits underneath the kind of metal washer piece, so I used a flat blade screwdriver just to wiggle underneath and try and get some of that loose and loosen it up and sort of free up the nut so it would come out. But you've obviously got to be very careful, because the aluminium is the sacrificial piece, and it will just wear away. So I figured just need to get slightly bigger washers when it goes back. As you just would have seen, the main part of the heat shield has now just been removed, and I'm just looking around cleaning up a few other bits and seeing what else I can get out. Okay, change of position. Now what we're doing is we're looking at the petrol tank. So as I said, 2 jacks, because now I did say earlier that I'd emptied the tank. I emptied it as much as I could. So you can see the petrol, as you can see, I've got the petrol tank supported now, so that's the next thing to come out. We did empty it as much as possible. It's not completely empty, so I wasn't sure how heavy this was going to be, and I'm sort of doing it myself. Well, right, make sure it's supported on both sides. One thing to be very careful of here, there's 2 metal straps, obviously there's 2 bolts up on the subframe on the rear of the car, near the front of the car. Obviously they go up into the chassis, but there is actually a 5th bolt in the middle at the front, and that's just on a plastic lug on the tank, so make sure you get that one. You wouldn't want to snap that off. Before lowering the petrol tank, the petrol line and the return line going from the tank up to the front of the car and back again, there's clips down the car, so I undid a couple of those just in case as we lowered it they were going to catch on the and cause the lines to kink. So I undid a couple of those clips, giving it a bit of movement. So as it lowered down, you have access to the breather hoses and also the electrics for the pump. So as it comes down, try and get all those unclipped. The breather hoses are quite easy. There's just a little push-in clip on the side. And once you've got those all undone, you can drop the tank and get it out from underneath the car. Okay guys, it's out. Now I suddenly thought I really need to know what I'm going to do with the fuel that's left in it. I need to try and get it out, but also want to go home shortly. So, as you can see, again, this thing has a lot of road on it, a lot of dirt. We'll have a quick look underneath here as well. It's a nice massive hole. So where's the light so you can see what's going on. There we go, it's a little bit better. Okay, so as we can see, it's fairly clean. Obviously where the exhaust, where the fuel tank, and then over there you can see where we get little bits of rot around the side. The brake line is going to be a lot easier to change now. They come up around the side here. Okay, now we're underneath the front part of the car. So this is, you can see the front near side subframe. Now the rear brake lines have to be replaced, and I was considering just putting a joint in them, to be honest, at the back, thinking, you know, it's possible. I've seen a lot of cars that, you know, built before have had joints in them, although, you know, for safety and maybe for all sorts of other reasons, you know, the more joins you have, the more chances are things can go wrong. So I was having a look underneath the bonnet to see how easy it would be to get to the whole brake line and replace it, and went to have a look underneath the car to see where they were going, and saw that they are joined. So how handy is that? So I'm here now trying to undo them. The one on the near side is a slightly different size to the one on the far side. The far side is pretty much the same diameters as the ones on the rears, etc. But I imagine they've done this just so that when you're running these in and you put them together, you don't put them in around the wrong way. Now, whether there's a difference in that or not, I'm not 100% sure. But hey, that's the way they're set up. I had a little bit of difficulty this first one. First of all, I had I think I had a spanner that was kind of trying to be all things. It was a hex, but it also had then the little notches on one side of it, and it just wasn't gripping properly. So I think I gave up on the first one and then tried the other one, got that one undone, and then went and got some other tools to try and get the perfect sizes to get that undone. Now that one's undone. This one is, this one's fighting back. So we will just get some WD-40 to squirt it. Now for those attempting to do this, there's a 15mm spanner on there and 11 on there. Right, while that's working, we're going to undo these clips here. So these clips are holding it all on. I'm not sure what we've got under there. Maybe just tied together under there, so hopefully we shouldn't have to take this off because it's kind of the whole subframe. Has to come off at some point, to be honest, but not right now. Right, so these clips, literally, if you force the outside piece away, these should come down. So since we've loosened that one off, we can pull this one away, and that should just pop out. It might be a bit stuck because obviously it's been underneath the car covered in crap, so they get a bit sticky. So might have to give them a wiggle. There's a few down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that's the fifth one there. Okay, so I had put WD-40 on this a little while back. I put a little bit of extra on it now. So we're going to see if we can get this undone. Once we've got these brake lines undone, we can drop the subframe. And one thing I've already noticed is there's a difference between the subframe I've got and this one. I don't think it's a major. We might be able to do something with it, I'm hoping. But let's see when we get it off. We'll have a look. Square bracket and a 17mm seems to fit that quite nicely. Alright, now are we still 11? That might be a bit. Okay. Oops. Right. So these little clips we want, still want those for when we put this other stuff back on, but these pipes are going effectively in the bin. They're no longer needed. and I'm pretty sure, considering the state of them, no one really want them, to be fair. We've got the brake lines undone. We're just going to go in and grab those, pull them out, and there we have them. Okay, here it is, all off. The one thing I need to check that I talked about is these little handbrake cable holders. They just look bolted on with one nut. I thought for a minute at one point there may have been a weld down the bottom, but it's just held on by one bolt. So we're going to pop those off, and we'll have to get those obviously cleaned up and painted. There we go. One very bare under the side of a Mini. So next steps for me, there's a few more bits to take off, obviously these trailing arm holders. Now what I need to do is find a mark onto the chassis so that I know pretty much where they go back. The next problem will be once I mark them, I'm going to be sanding all that back and repainting. So we need to find a way of putting a decent mark in there that I'll be able to see and work out where they go. Might be a few measurements taken as well, a few pictures, just to make sure that's accurate. Obviously pop out all these rubbers, rubber covers, and we'll pop back the cabling, where the cabling disappears inside the car as well. And the same on the other side there. We will see what we can do about cleaning up, getting all the bits and pieces off, get those the little plastic holders that hold the sensor connectors together, get those out so I can get in there with the and really give that a good grind back and get rid of all the crap that's there. Anyway, that's the bottom of the car, and that's all for me. Only a good mix at 31st of October. No, that's not right. As I said that, I'm thinking,
what do you do?
Really? I know. I set fire to people's houses. What do you think? Should we go with 5th of November instead?
That's right.